This marks the beginning of media unit number 2. Going back on record, time is 1:51 p.m.
So we're back on the record, Ms. Camacho. You remember that you're under oath, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, on January 3rd, 2020, Mr. Coleman was working as a flight attendant on a trip to Buffalo, correct?
Correct.
And you became aware of an alleged incident concerning his conduct at the Buffalo Hyatt Regency Hotel on January 4th, 2020, correct?
Correct.
Now, you participated in the investigation of the allegations related to his conduct, correct?
Correct.
And what was your role in terms of the investigation?
In conjunction with the in-flight leadership, we met with Mr. Coleman and kind of conducted the investigation. So received all the information from the different parties from the hotel, the business partner, and gathered the information.
Okay, so I want to be clear about how this went in terms of the order. You say you met with Mr. Coleman, but did you attempt to obtain information prior to your meeting with Mr. Coleman?
Yes.
And what information did you obtain?
We obtained information provided by Buffalo Police and by the hotel, to include statements and videos.
Did you interview anyone at the hotel?
No, we just gathered their statements.
Okay. Do you know if anyone else in JetBlue management interviewed any employees at the hotel?
No, I did not.
And did you interview anyone at the Buffalo, within the Buffalo Police Department?
No, we just obtained their the document, the police record.
And you were in possession of this information prior to the meeting with Mr. Coleman, correct?
That is correct.
Now, you talked about you engaged in the investigation along with, and I didn't catch the end of that. With whom were you working in terms of this investigation?
With the in-flight leadership is what I said, and in this case, it was David Davis, as I'm guessing at that time he was the supervisor on duty when this call came in.
So was David Davis participating in the investigation?
Yes.
And what was he charged with? What was the level of his investigation?
In terms of what David Davis was doing in the investigation? Oh, okay. He was representing leadership, in-flight leadership. So usually we meet with the crew member and leadership to kind of assess anything. They have the knowledge of the operation. So anything operational, he'll be able to support.
Was there anyone else other than you and Mr. David Davis who was participating in the investigation of what transpired in Buffalo on January 4?
The base manager was also looped in, Juan Ramos.
Okay.
So he was part of the decision making.
Okay, but I'll break that down later between investigation and decision making. But was anyone else involved in the investigation other than you and Mr. Davis?
No.
Now, Wanda Garcia reported to you, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Isn't it true that she also participated in the investigation?
She was brought in to contact Mr. Coleman for his medical documentation.
Okay. Did she have any other role in the investigation other than that?
And typing up the document.
Okay, other than soliciting medical information and typing up, and what, I'm sorry, what document did she type up?
The crew relations separation review?
Okay. Then, other than typing up that document and contacting Mr. Coleman for medical information, did she have any further role in the investigation?
No, she did not.
Did she have any role in the decision-making process?
No.
So who participated in the decision to, well, let me back up. Mr. Coleman, right after the event, was suspended from flight operations, correct?
Correct.
And did that occur on January 5th?
You know what? I do not recall what date. I do not recall what date it was. I think at that time, actually, I do not recall now.
Okay, would you agree?
I'm not going to speculate.
Okay, well, would you agree within 1 to 3 days of the January 4th incident, he was suspended from flight duty?
He was suspended at some point. I don't know how many days after the incident it was.
Do you know who made the decision to suspend him initially from flight operations?
That will be the in-flight leadership. So that will be on Juan Ramos and his team.
Okay. And then he was reinstated to flight duty in January, correct?
Correct.
And do you know who made the decision to reinstate him to flight duty?
His leadership, I think, reinstated while the investigation continued.
Okay. And when you say his leadership, can you identify the individual who reinstated him to flight duty?
Juan Ramos, the base manager.
Do you know if anyone else participated in that decision to reinstate Mr. Coleman to flight duty in January?
And the only one I worked directly with was David Davis, at that time the supervisor. So he might have also been involved in that.
But you don't know for certain?
Correct.
All right. Now, who ultimately Mr. Coleman was suspended a second time, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And do you know who participated in the decision to suspend him a second time?
I think at that time we were culminating the investigation, so it would have been his leadership also.
So who is that?
It must have been Juan Ramos. The base manager is the one that ultimately has the decision of working with the crew member and taking the action. So I would say Juan Ramos. And again, it could be through his supervisors, David Davis.
Oh, yeah. So do you know whether David Davis participated in the decision to terminate or suspend Mr. Coleman for a second time?
Yeah, no, I'm not sure.
Okay. Now, who made the decision to moving beyond the second suspension to the termination? Who made the decision to terminate Mr. Coleman?
So the investigation, we had all the documentation, and at that time, we recommended, crew relations, myself, recommended for separation. And at that time, the leadership of in-flight, Juan Ramos, I'm assuming this time, concurred with that.
Okay, so you recommended termination.
Correct.
Did and you made that recommendation to Mr. Ramos?
Correct.
And Mr. Ramos accepted your recommendation?
That is correct.
Okay. Did you consult with anybody prior to making your recommendation for termination?
Yes, we consult with the crew relations team. So that will be my direct crew leader, Robin King.
And how did you communicate with Robin King concerning Mr. Coleman?
We will also provide the documentation, the crew relations separation review with the documentation and review that information that we gathered from
Well,
the investigation.
My question is, how did you communicate with her? Did you meet her in the hallway? Did you email her? Did you telephone her? What form did that consultation?
No, it will be usually a meeting, a virtual meeting that we will review the different cases, and this was one of the cases that was brought forward for review.
Okay. And did you send Robin King any information prior to the meeting?
The way it is structured is that we place the information in a SharePoint, a slide, and then we review the information there. So every detail that's in this crew relation separation review is reviewed on that call.
So what information would you have given her?
It's a PowerPoint slide that we provide. So I'll probably have the summary and the same information that's in the separation review: the date of hire, the location, the alleged occurrence.
Well, let's go back to the package we were looking at before. I'm going to ask you to turn to page 919. That appears to me to be a slide.
That's it.
Okay.
That's actually the slide I was talking about.
Okay, so this is the information you would have sent to Robin King?
Correct. This is the information we will review.
Okay. Would you also have sent her the crew relation separation review, or just the slide?
At that time, just a slide to review and decide the outcome of the investigation.
Do you recall any discussion that you had with Robin King concerning Mr. Coleman?
No, other than in the call reviewing and going through the details, no other specific conversation.
So was it a matter of you running through the bullet points here and Ms. King saying, yes, I agree with you, he should be terminated?
It's the call is all the crew relations managers or the crew relations team. She will lead the call and any questions or will review. And then, yes, ultimately it will be, yes, we agree with separation.
Did Robin King ask you any questions about the Coleman matter?
I do not recall anything specific.
Did you ever speak to Ed Backlor, Baklor? Or first of all, do you know who Ed Backlor is?
Yes, I do know who he is. He is a VP.
Did he? I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I would not talk to him directly, not like Robin, that we have a conversation in a call. With Ed, we will just send the crew relation separation review packet.
Okay.
And then he'll approve.
Do you have your declaration in the package of documents that you received?
Yes. The one that says Declaration of Grisel?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Yes, I have it.
Okay. If you could turn to the third page of that.
Okay.
And I'm gonna, you see where it says 18, the number 18?
Mhm.
And
Yes.
it reads there specifically, I recall speaking with Mr. Davis, Mr. Ramos, and Ms. King about plaintiff's misconduct and the appropriate disciplinary action, and that we collectively came to the conclusion that termination was appropriate. Is that accurate, paragraph 18?
Yes, that's correct. Not at the same time, but yes, we had conversations.
And that you and that you collectively came to the conclusion that termination was appropriate.
Correct.
So this was the termination decision was a joint decision of you, Mr. Davis, Mr. Ramos, and Ms. King, correct?
Correct. Ms. King and I recommended to the in-flight leadership, which is Mr. Davis and Mr. Ramos, and they concurred.
Okay. And when did you speak to Mr. Ramos in terms of making this recommendation? Or how did you communicate your recommendation to Mr. Ramos?
Okay, so once it's reviewed with Ms. King, and we have the recommendation, we agree on the recommendation, that is when we communicate to the in-flight leadership, in this case, Mr. Ramos, and Mr. Davis, because he was involved in the original conversation with Mr. Coleman, and let Mr. Ramos know this is our recommendation.
And how did you communicate that to Mr. Ramos? Was that a phone call? Was that an email? Was that a hallway conversation?
I do not recall, but it's usually a phone call, or they'll come to our office and we'll meet personally. So it's not usually a hallway conversation.
Okay, and when you recommended termination to Mr. Ramos, how did Mr. Ramos respond?
Mr. Ramos was involved, he had all the documentation, so we provided the documentation and told him this was our recommendation, and he concurred.
Okay. And the same question for Mr. Davis. When you recommended termination to Mr. Davis, how did Mr. Davis respond?
Yeah, I think, if I'm not mistaken, from what I recall, Mr. Ramos will then notify Mr. Davis to that the decision of a separation, and he will carry that along.
Okay, well, if we go back to paragraph 18, it states specifically, I recall speaking with Mr. Davis. Is that not true?
Yes, no, that is true.
Oh, you did speak with Mr. Davis.
Yeah. Correct. We've had the conversations with Mr. Davis and Mr. Coleman during the investigation. And since he was involved in the investigation, we also let him know of the recommendation. But the one that makes the decision would have been Mr. Ramos.
Well, here you say that we collectively came to the conclusion that termination was appropriate.
Okay, correct.
So did Mr. Davis then concur with the decision to terminate Mr. Coleman?
Yes, he actually, I think, was the person that called, if I'm not mistaken. So yes, the answer is yes.
Okay. And the way he communicated the concurrence, was that a telephone call with you?
That would have been with Mr. Ramos. That would have been a conversation with Mr. Ramos in terms of, oh, this is what we have decided, or the decision that has been reached.
Well, so you're saying Mr. Davis never spoke to you directly about whether he agreed with the termination. Is that correct?
Okay, so we spoke after Mr. Ramos spoke to him. So we all collectively agreed on the separation, but it wasn't that he was, that I had a conversation, hey, do you agree? It was more, this is what in-flight leadership has decided, and he's part of in-flight leadership.
I'm afraid
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Did Mr. Davis ever say to you words to the effect, yes, Ms. Camacho, I agree that Mr. Coleman should be terminated?
I do not recall it yes, I agree that Mr. Coleman will be terminated. It's more that we will move forward with the termination.
So you told Mr. Davis that Mr. Coleman would be terminated, correct?
Mr. Ramos told Mr. Davis, so we told Mr. Davis of the termination, yes.
Were you present when Mr. Ramos said that to Mr. Davis?
We were we were in a phone call. It was not person.
Okay.
So we communicate with either one, Mr. Davis or Mr. Ramos. That's when we say leadership.
Okay.
But yes, Mr. Ramos was communicated and Mr. Davis was also communicated.
So you were on a three-way phone call with Mr. Ramos and Mr. Davis?
Not three-way because they were in the same room, in the same area. So.
Okay, so I'm trying to see this physically. I'm trying to get this in my mind's eye.
Yeah.
You were on the phone with Mr. Ramos and Mr. Davis was physically present with you?
Correct. No, physically present with Mr. Ramos.
Oh, okay, you were physically present with Mr. Ramos and the two of you called Mr. Davis together.
No. I was in my office. Mr. Ramos and Mr. Davis were in their office, in the leadership office.
Okay.
Different offices. Not my office.
Okay. So you spoke to Mr. Davis and Mr. Ramos at the same time.
They were in the same place, yes. We spoke at the same time. Not in my office.
Okay.
Okay.
And during this call, so this is a call that you made to Mr. Davis and Mr. Ramos at the same time, correct?
Correct. The call to Mr. Ramos and Mr. Davis was there.
Okay. And during that call, you recommended termination to Mr. Davis and Mr. Ramos, correct?
Correct. That was a recommendation from Relations.
And Mr. Ramos agreed with your recommendation, correct?
That is correct.
And Mr. Davis agreed with the termination recommendation as well?
Mr. Davis was in the area, so yes, he was aware of the recommendation.
No, but that's not my question. My question is not whether he was aware, right? But you understand. Let me back up here. You signed this declaration, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then you see the last sentence. It says, "I declare under penalty of perjury that the foregoing is true and accurate, is true and correct to the best of my knowledge." Right? Did you read this declaration carefully before you signed it?
So we're not saying anything differently here. That Mr. Davis and Mr. Ramos were aware of the separation and they agreed with the separation.
Okay.
I don't know if there's something else that we're trying to say.
Yes. Well, so your paragraph 18. Well, we're making it hard for the court reporter, so only one person can talk at a time. No, it's all right. And I don't know whose fault it is, but we just have to be careful. And if I'm asking a question, either you have to wait or you can say, please let me finish what I was saying, because I don't mean to interrupt you, but I am trying to understand. So let me ask, this sentence again says specifically, I recall speaking with Mr. Davis, Mr. Ramos, and Ms. King about plaintiff's misconduct and the appropriate disciplinary action, and that we collectively came to the conclusion that termination was appropriate. So that signifies to me that Mr. Davis agreed to the termination. And that's my question to you. Did Mr. Davis communicate to you that he agreed with the termination decision?
Yeah, sorry that somehow there was a misunderstanding. Yes. So,
Mr. Davis told you, I agree that Mr. Coleman should be terminated.
Correct. I mean, with the review of the investigation and the data, yes.
Okay. I'm
sorry.
No, don't apologize. I don't know if it's you or it's I, but Mr. Davis articulated to you that he agreed with the decision to terminate. Is that correct?
Mr. Davis was aware of the termination and moved forward with the termination. The thing is, you're asking me to recall a specific instance, which I do not recall. The actual where he said yes or no, that's what you're trying to get at, I'm sure. But we agreed with leadership, and that's why we went forward with termination. So yes, he agreed with the termination.
What I'm trying to understand is what you meant by the word "we collectively," and that's what I'm focused on. We collectively came to the conclusion that termination was appropriate. So I understand that from that Mr. Davis affirmed the decision to terminate. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. Do you know who drafted the termination letter that went to Mr. Coleman?
That would have been in-flight leadership, but I do not know exactly who drafted it.
Now, if we can go, you requested that Mr. Coleman, after the report of his conduct on January 4th, you requested that Mr. Coleman provide a written statement, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And if we can move back to this packet, and I'm going to ask you to turn to page 922.
Oh, okay.
Now, we're both looking at an email dated January 5th from Clay Coleman to David Davis, and the subject line is diabetic incident at the Buffalo Hyatt Regency, and it goes from 922 to 923. Are you looking at this document as well?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And would you agree that this is the statement that Mr. Coleman provided in response to the request of JetBlue?
That is correct.
And you've read this statement before, correct?
Yes.
Can you when's the last time that you read this entire page-and-a-half document?
It has not been recently.
Okay, well, so I'd like to take a few minutes and completely at your own pace, if you could read this letter again and let me know when you've completed reading it.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, you've read the entire document?
Correct.
Did you ever make a determination? And this is a document you received in January of 2020, correct?
Correct.
Did you ever determine that any of the factual assertions in this page-and-a-half were not true?
I'm sorry, what do you mean?
Well,
Factual assertion?
as you read this, he talks about his whereabouts. He discusses how much that he had 2 or 3 beers. He talks about the fact that he had a diabetic episode. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Did you ever, in your investigation of Mr. Coleman, did you ever determine that any of the things he said in this email were untruthful?
From what I recall, no, I think from the time that he got to the airport or to the hotel, what he did, he went out, came back. Just some of the things did not have more information or more detail from what the hotel and the report gave us.
Can you point?
Can you understand?
Yeah, no, I don't.
Okay.
I'm asking if you can point to any factual representation in this document, and with respect to which you made a determination that was not true.
Okay, so it says I sat down at the 7th paragraph.
Yeah.
On that page, I sat down at the hotel restaurant, wanted to eat and drink a lot of water. I was extremely hungry and thirsty, and I was urinating a lot. And then he says, I remember the server telling me that I needed to go to my room. He couldn't understand why. So from what we got from the hotel, they were concerned about the safeties of others in the restaurant. And that is why they asked him to leave, and that they will be more than happy to take food to his room. So that's one of the issues.
Well, okay. Aside from that, is there any factual representation in this letter that you found to be, that you determined was not true?
Well, I cannot, from what the information we receive, I cannot confirm either the blood sugar or having an episode.
No, I understand there's some things that perhaps you could not confirm, but was there anything other than that reference in the 7th paragraph that where you made a determination that his factual representation was untrue?
If I understand correctly, anything else that was not true in this document, not dealing with medical condition?
Or anything including medical condition. I understand there might be some things that you couldn't make a determination one way or the other, but I'm asking you, is there anything else other than what you referenced in the 7th paragraph where you made a determination that representation is untrue?
This was just part of the information we received, so I guess the answer will be no.
Okay. Know that you can't point to anything else specifically as untruthful. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, Mr. Coleman was stating, had communicated to JetBlue in January that he had a diabetic episode or attack, correct?
You're referring to this document?
Mr. Coleman in January represented to the company, said to the company,
okay,
that any objectionable conduct that occurred on January 4th at the hotel was only due to the fact that he had a diabetic episode, correct? That was
correct.
Okay. and in fact, you took steps to investigate that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And part of your investigation was to instruct Wanda Garcia to request medical information from Mr. Coleman so that you could determine whether the diabetes caused the objectionable conduct, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And then in the meantime, Mr. Coleman was allowed to return to work as a flight attendant, correct?
Correct.
Had there been any preliminary determination by anyone in JetBlue management to the effect that the diabetic episode did, in fact, cause the conduct on January 4th?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Well, let me put it
That
this
it
way.
was or was not?
Why was Mr. Coleman permitted to return to flight duty in January?
Because we were still under investigation. He had provided information that this was due to a diabetic episode, so we were awaiting the confirmation for that.
Now, did you have any conversations with other management representatives concerning the diabetic episode and the possibility that that was the cause of the conduct on January 4th?
Yeah, well, Davis was in the conversation with Mr. Coleman and myself. So he was aware, and we also informed Juan Ramos that we wanted to get documentation to confirm this before moving, before continuing with the investigation or ending the investigation.
So you discussed your interest in obtaining medical information with David Davis and Juan Ramos. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Did you discuss that issue with anybody else?
Well, I did ask Wanda to get to reach out and try to get the documentation as soon as possible.
And did you discuss the issue of Mr. Coleman's diabetic condition with anybody else other than David Davis, Juan Ramos, and Wanda Garcia?
I do not recall other than that, those three.
Yeah, and isn't it true that Mr. Davis expressed his view that Mr. Coleman's conduct on January 4th was due to his diabetic condition?
I do not recall that he said that it was due to his diabetic conditions. I recall that Mr. Coleman brought that up in our conversation, that it was due to the diabetics. So I don't know if he was confirming, but no, I do not recall.
And did anyone object to your investigating the issue of the diabetic condition being the cause of the conduct on January 4th?
No.
Okay. And was it your view that if Mr. Coleman's diabetic condition was the cause of his objectionable conduct, that he should not be terminated?
Yeah, we would take that into consideration when making the decision that if there was any medical condition that contributed to that behavior, we will then address it otherwise.
Well, if you had made that determination that in fact the diabetic condition did contribute to the January 4th conduct, would you still have terminated Mr. Coleman?
No, it would be going through another process.
And that process would be what, referral to an EAP or health service?
Or ADA, accommodation to review.
Did you ever meet with Mr. Coleman face to face?
Yes, we met face to face.
When did you meet with him face to face?
I believe this is in the separation rec. I'm trying to see if the separation rec has the date.
Well, I'm asking
No.
you, well, do you have
No, I
a,
do not.
do you have a distinct recollection? Do you specifically
There we go.
recall meeting Mr. Coleman face to face in 2020?
Yes, we met face to face, Mr. Coleman, Mr. David Davis, and myself.
Okay. And it was just, okay, I just want to be clear. Mr. Coleman, Mr. Davis, and yourself, it was just the three of you.
Correct.
And that would have been in January?
Correct, and it states in the separation rec January 8th.
Okay. What are you referring to? You went and looked at documentation to confirm that?
Yeah, it was the
Page-
separation recommendation, page 921. So that paragraph that says during the investigation meeting with crew relations.
But so that reference that you're referring to on page 921 talks about an investigation meeting on January 8th. It does not reference who was there, but your testimony is that it was you, Mr. Davis, and Mr. Coleman, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Did you, as part of your investigation, did you do any research into whether a diabetic episode can result in disorientation or sluggish movement or impediments to speech?
No,
Are you familiar with the reference to acetone breath? Acetone spelled ACETONE.
no,
Are you familiar with the potential for a diabetic episode to result in the excretion of byproducts in the respiratory tract that smell like alcohol?
no, I was not aware.
Okay. Do you know whether Mr. Coleman was ever presented with a trespass warrant while at the Hyatt Regency Hotel?
I don't know if he was presented with a trespass warrant, but when we were, when the hotel communicated with us, they said that they did not want him in the premises anymore and they wanted him removed.
Are you familiar with the term trespass warrant?
Yes,
Okay. And so you have no knowledge as to whether he was issued a trespass warrant, correct?
correct.
And the trespass charges that were brought against him by the Hyatt Hotel were dismissed, correct?
I'm not sure that they were dismissed or not.
Okay.
Not recall.
If you could move to page 910 of that packet.
Okay. Okay, I'm there.
Are you there? So this is an email from Clay Coleman to Wanda Garcia that reads, Wanda, this is my official diagnosis from my doctor. I hope this answers your question, Clay Coleman. And if you see the next two pages, there is a document that starts, that has at its title at the top, summary view for Coleman Clay, account number 143664. You see that?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And it goes on to a second page, and it's signed electronically by Dr. Richard Janovitz. You see that?
Yes.
Now, did you receive this documentation from Ms. Garcia?
Yes, we did. Yes, I did.
And did you review it?
Yes.
Did you, are you, there's a reference on the first page to metformin HCl tablet. Are you aware of what that medication is for?
Yeah, I believe it's for treatment of diabetic.
Or are you certain, or are you just guessing from the context?
Yeah, I don't know, but I'm just thinking from what I've heard in the context that it has to do something with diabetes.
Okay. Now, Mr. Coleman is provided this medical information because Wanda Garcia requested it, correct?
We did not request the medical record. This has a lot more information that we would never request. We just requested if he could provide documentation regarding that his condition will cause the behavior that he had.
Okay. Well, how did you communicate that request to Clay Coleman?
Via email.
You
Wanda reached out to him via email.
And did you get a copy of that email?
I'm sorry, of the document that I'm looking at now?
Yeah, you say Wanda wrote to him and said, we need an email, we need information substantiating that your behavior on January 4th was caused by your diabetes. Did Wanda forward that email to you?
No, just to Mr. Coleman.
Okay, if you can move to 913, page number 913.
Okay. Okay, I'm there.
Okay. Um, in the middle of the page, you see it where it says, "Hello, Clay. Thank you for your quick reply. However, we need a doctor's note to substantiate your response on the date of the incident was a result of your medical condition."
Mhm.
Okay. Did Wanda Garcia advise you that she had made this communication to Mr. Coleman?
Correct.
Okay. And did she advise you, if we move to the top of this thread, at the top of the page, it says, from Clay to Wanda Garcia, "Wanda, I will make an appointment with my doctor and consult with him about your question. I will forward you a copy of his response." Clay. Did Wanda advise you that Mr. Coleman had made this response?
Yes.
Okay. And then if you can move to 9:15.
Got it.
And at the top of the page, it says, "Wanda, my physician, Dr. Janovitz, is out of the office this week." You see where I'm reading?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and I will see him on Monday, February 24th, the deadline you gave me at 1:45. I will expedite his statement to you on Monday when it is completed. Of course, there is a chance that Dr. Janovitz will not be in that day, even though I have an appointment. I would anticipate that an extension would be given if I can prove this to you. Did Wanda Garcia communicate to you that Mr. Coleman had made this response?
Yes, she did.
Okay. And then if you move to the next page, actually, no, let's move to 9:17. And on page 917, we have an email from Clay Coleman. It's dated February 25th, 2020. It's subject line doctor's note. And if you move to the next page, there's a doctor's note from Dr. Janovitz, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and you would you agree that you received this information from Wanda Garcia on or about February 25th?
That is correct, yes.
And the famously horrible medical handwriting here is evident, but I deciphered it before, and I'm going to make that attempt again. What I read here is starting at the RX. You see where I am with the RX?
Yes. Yes.
It says, "Mr. Coleman has diabetes and high blood sugar, could possibly have," I had this before. Could
Explain his conduct.
Yeah,
his condition?
could possibly have explained his conduct on January 4, 2020. Is that a correct reading?
Yes.
That note?
Or his condition, I think it says.
Okay, thank you. Could possibly have explained his condition on January 4th, 2020, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you made a determination that this medical note was insufficient evidence to explain Mr. Coleman's conduct on January 4th?
Yes, that is correct.
Did you ever communicate to Mr. Coleman that you considered this note to be insufficient?
Once, no, I did not communicate directly with him.
Okay. Did you ever instruct Wanda Garcia to tell Mr. Coleman that this doctor's note was not sufficient to explain his conduct in the view of JetFlow?
No.
Can you explain why no one from JetBlue communicated to Mr. Coleman that this doctor's note was insufficient?
we had communicated to Mr. Coleman that we needed documentation to justify his behavior, which he was stating that it was due to his medical condition. So we had communicated that information previously when he said the first note. And then we said, that's not what, we don't need your diagnosis. We just need to verify. So this was the second note that we got. And at this time, we decided to move forward with the documents that we had.
Was Dr. Janovitz in Buffalo on January 4th, to the best of your knowledge?
I'm not aware.
Okay. How could Dr. Janovitz ever have known for certain if Mr. Coleman's conduct on January 4th was due to his diabetic condition?
Object to form. Go ahead and answer if you know.
No. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I'll strike that. Didn't you set for Mr. Coleman an impossible task in terms of asking for a doctor's note affirmatively stating that the diabetic condition caused his conduct on January 4th?
Object to form.
Do you need to hear the question again?
Oh, okay, sorry. I didn't know.
Yeah, when she
to answer or not.
No, when she objects, unless she directs you not to answer, you are still required to answer.
Okay.
I know that's confusing. So let me ask the question again, because there is no judge to rule on the objections here. So all the objections are reviewed down the line. So my question is, isn't it true that you set an impossible task for Mr. Coleman in expecting him to provide a medical note stating definitely that his conduct on January 4th was due to his diabetic condition?
Same objection.
I do not think it was impossible for him. We weren't aware of what exactly medically or what condition. So we were trying to kind of go with the information that he provided and document that also. So we were trying to get more inputs by requesting this note, because he had brought up in the investigation that might have been due to his medical condition.
And he did provide you with a doctor's statement stating that his conduct on January 4th could have been caused by his diabetic condition, correct?
Correct, that it possibly could explain.
Okay. But you would only have been satisfied if he provided a document from his doctor that stated that his conduct on January 4th was definitely caused by his diabetic condition.
Object to form.
Yes, we would have probably reviewed further. However, what we were looking at is the relationship with the hotel and the business partner, and how his conduct was detrimental to that relationship that we have built with all our business partners.
So in the final analysis, did it matter whether or not his conduct was caused by the diabetic condition?
Yes, we would have looked at it differently, because then we would have to assist like any other crew member and make sure that if they're performing the duties, that they are safe and they could perform the duties accordingly.
Would you agree that it's JetBlue's policy when an employee has identified a disability? Would you agree it's JetBlue's policy to engage in an interactive dialogue with that employee to determine what accommodations might be appropriate?
Object to form.
Do you need to hear that again?
No, if a crew member identifies a disability or comes forward with a disability, we will move forward for them to go through our compliance team for them to evaluate and see if they can perform the duties.
Refer that person to what organization?
I'm sorry, our compliance team.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's part of the ADA compliance.
Did you ever refer Mr. Coleman to the compliance team?
I do not recall if we referred him.
Well, why would you not have referred him to the compliance team?
Usually the crew member identifies an issue and then we'll refer them to the compliance team. If we would have seen that there was reasonable issues or documentation, we would have moved forward with the compliance.
Do you receive, you're familiar with the Americans with Disabilities Act?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And do you receive training from JetBlue with respect to compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act?
Yes.
Okay. And at that time during 2020, did you understand a diabetic condition to be a disability that required accommodation under the Americans with Disabilities Act?
Object to form.
That diabetes could be part of the ADA accommodation, yes.
Well, my question was more specific. Did in 2020, was it your understanding that diabetes, a diabetic condition, would constitute a disability under the Americans with Disabilities Act?
Object to form.
Yes.
Okay. Now, did you discuss, and I'm referring to the note at 918, did you discuss, and I'm referring to Dr. Janowitz's note,
Okay.
did you provide this note to anybody else at JetBlue?
No, this was part of the investigation. This was not disseminated.
Okay. So you did not give this document to Mr. Ramos?
It is included as part of the separation packet, so he received it.
Okay, so anyone who received the separation package would also have received the diabetes diagnosis and the note from Dr. Janowitz?
That is correct. And I'm sorry, you said the diabetes diagnosis?
When
Was
I say
that-
I'm sorry, I don't mean to be obtuse. I'm referring to pages, we don't have it based on the 2 pages following 910. So what should be stamped as 911 and 912.
Okay.
So So anybody who received the separation report would have received the doctor's note at 9/18. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And anyone who received the separation package would also have received the what I refer to as the diagnosis, the Family Medical Center 2-page document at 9/11, 9/12.
Yeah, I will have to verify, but I do not think 9/11 and 9/12 are included.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last part. You think they were included?
I do not think they were included.
Okay,
The 11 and 12, just the 18.
okay, very good. So after receiving the document that's bait stamped 9/18, did you discuss this note with anybody else within JetBlue management?
I'm sorry, additional to those who received the separation packet?
Yes. Did you?
No.
Did you? I'm saying, did you have a discussion with anybody concerning? No.
No,
Did you ever request a medical release from Mr. Coleman?
no,
Did you make any effort to communicate with Dr. Janovitz?
no,
Did you make any effort to contact your ADA compliance resource personnel within JetBlue for further guidance on this issue?
no,
Did you ever make a determination did you ever make a determination that Mr. Coleman was intoxicated with alcohol on January 4th?
no,
Did you make a determination on January? Did you make a determination with respect to the information that you received in early January that Mr. Coleman's balance was impaired on January 4th?
no,
Did you make a determination that his speech was impaired on January 4th?
no,
Do you have in your packet there a document titled Crew Member Progressive Guidance Report?
Yes.
Okay. And right below that title, it says date of occurrence, trigger event January 4th, 2020, correct?
Yes, that's
Are you
correct.
specifying which version of that document?
Yeah, the one that we provided.
So it's a photograph of it.
Yes.
I just want to make sure she was looking at the right one, not that there's any
All right.
major differences.
Is this a document that was this is a document that was prepared by Wanda Garcia, correct?
No, this usually is prepared by the crew leader,
Okay,
and I would say it's Linda Reyes.
very good. Now, the first paragraph reads, Clay, we are meeting today to discuss the incident that occurred on January 4th, 2020, in which you displayed inappropriate behavior at the BUF Crew Hotel while on a layover and were removed from the hotel by local authorities. This behavior was in violation section 3.4 e-guidance and performance expectations of the crew member Blue Book, CBB, and section 5.7 trigger events of the in-flight Blue Book supplement, IBBS. Now, was there in fact any meeting with Mr. Coleman in March of 2020 with respect to the events of January 4th?
I would not have met with Mr. Coleman at that point. That would have been the in-flight leadership. So Linda will be the one probably, or David Davis will met with him.
Well, were you provided a draft of this document before it was sent to Mr. Coleman?
Yes,
And you approved the draft?
I reviewed the draft. Yeah.
Okay.
And it was sent back to Linda, I guess Linda in this case.
The next paragraph reads, the appropriate follow-up is suspension. I have explained that you are being removed with the removal pending investigation code to allow time for a full and fair investigation. I explained that your removal is without pay and that all of your JetBlue accounts, FLICA, and past travel privileges are suspended during the investigation. Now, Ms. Camacho, isn't it true that from the date of the issuance of this crew member progressive guidance report through the date of his termination, there was no additional investigation by JetBlue?
The investigation started in January 4th or 5th, whatever date of the incident it was. And it was throughout the date of the separation. So that includes gathering witness statements and gathering approval from senior leadership.
If you can move back to the large packet at 920, the page 920.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay. Now, the termination decision in terms of evidence was based on those 8 sources that are enumerated under supporting documentation, correct?
Correct.
And this document is is prepared by Wanda Garcia on February 27th, 2020, correct?
Correct.
After February 27th, 2020, was there any additional investigation conducted into this matter?
It went through the approval process, which is part of the investigation. So
Well, was there ever, so that I understand that there was an approval process.
Mhm.
Was there any attempt to obtain additional information after February 27th, 2020?
I do not recall if there was any other reaching out to anybody else after February 2020. I'm looking at those documents and the approval from Ed Backler is March 16. So until that time, we were still looking into this case.
Yes, but my question is, can you identify, actually, let's move this back. Now you testified that you obtained Mr. Coleman's medical note from Dr. Janovitz on or about February 25th, 2020, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and that document was not included in the crew relations separation review, correct?
Which document? I'm sorry. You're referring to?
Going back, I'm going to page 920 again, the crew relations separation review.
Okay. And the question, I'm sorry.
That Dr. Janovitz's note, that's date stamp 918, was not included as part of the crew relations separation review on paginated 920 to 921, correct?
Correct.
And you testified, correct, that there was no effort to follow up on Dr. Janovitz's note with respect to Dr. Janovitz's note at 918 in order for the purpose of obtaining more information concerning Mr. Coleman's medical condition, correct?
Correct. We will not contact the doctor.
Okay. So can you identify after February 25th of 2020 any effort that JetBlue engaged in to obtain new evidence related to this issue?
Not from the documents that I have here.
Okay. Did you have, before the crew member progressive guidance report was issued by Linda Reyes, did you have any discussion with Linda Reyes?
Not that I recall directly with Linda.
But you reviewed and approved the report, correct?
Correct.
And how did you communicate your approval of the report to Ms. Reyes?
It through email, and it will be Wanda was the one that was collecting their approvals. So it would have been everybody would send an email for Wanda to collect the approvals.
Did you ever make a determination one way or the other whether Mr. Coleman's diabetic condition may have been the cause of his conduct at the Hyatt?
No.
Okay. Did you ever okay, the person. And forgive me if I've asked this before, but did you interview any of the individuals whose statements were received from the Hyatt Hotel?
No,
No. Do you know if anyone from JetBlue did interview any of those witnesses?
no, I'm not aware of that.
Did you ever talk to Melissa McDowell concerning her statement that was received?
No.
If we can move to page 922.
Okay.
The third to last paragraph, it begins a security guard.
Okay.
You see where I am? And it
Yeah.
reads, a security guard that was standing next to me was very nice and explained that I had a fruity smell to my breath and it was best that I go to my room and order room service. He was so nice. I went to the cash machine and withdrew money and gave him a $20 tip. We were proceeding to my room when 6 Buffalo police met me in the lobby and told me that I needed to leave the premises now. Do you know who that security guard was who is identified in that first sentence?
No, I don't.
Did you make any effort to identify who that security guard was?
I believe that it was provided, if it's the name, it was provided in the statement from the hotel. But we did not know who that security is.
Okay. I think I asked you before about any consultation with your compliance group, but did you consult with any medical expert concerning
No.
the possibility that Mr. Coleman's conduct on January 4th could have been caused by his diabetic condition?
No.
Now, if turning back, I think to the slide, page 919.
Okay.
Now, what's the purpose? You identified this document before. How would you identify this document? It says it's called, in the middle, there's a title summary of trigger event. But how would typically at JetBlue, how would you refer to this document?
This is a summary for our, what we call a just culture call.
I'm sorry, summary for a just culture?
Yeah, just culture call.
And it's used to provide an overview concerning potential discipline?
Correct.
Okay.
There'll be any investigation that's conducted, we'll review it. And this is the format that we use.
And typically would such a report as this include any defenses that the employee has raised to defend his conduct?
Yes, include what we came up or found out in the investigation.
Including the employee's defenses?
Correct.
Okay. And And going back to the crew. To the crew relations separation review, does that serve a similar purpose to the document we were just looking at 919?
The slide is reviewed in a call with the crew relations team. The separation packet is what's prepared for approval.
Okay. And typically would this document also include any defenses raised by the employee?
Correct.
Okay. Now, looking at the supporting documentation, the first 4 references, VP approval dated, and then progressive guidance suspension date, director approval dated, and then number 4, crew relations separation recommendation. Those all refer to internal review documents, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And this progressive guidance suspension at number 2, do you know what that's referring to?
Yeah, that's the photograph that you shared earlier. It doesn't have a number on it.
Okay. That's the one where at the bottom it's signed by Mr. Coleman and dated 3/16/20.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay. And there's no date is at number 2. There is no date. I'm sorry, strike that. I'm not speaking coherently myself. At number 2, it says progressive guidance suspension date, and there's no date after that. Is that unusual, or is that typical not to have a date there?
That's typical as the document is prepared before we have all the dates and approvals.
I see.
So, but the documents are included in the packet and they're dated at that time.
So is it typical for the crew relations separation review to be completed prior to the progressive guidance document?
Correct. At least the preliminary, and then we'll continue to complete it.
Well, was this document ever completed? So strike that. Is this then an incomplete document because there's no dates for the VP approval or the progressive guidance or the director approval?
The separation packet will have, usually is an email from the VP and director approving it, and that has the date. So it is common that the date might not be in the cover page, but it'll be in the documents attached with the separation review.
Okay. So if moving to the document 5, it says the crew member statement dated January 5th, 2020. You see where I just read that?
Yes.
And do you know what that's referring to?
The statement that that Mr. Coleman provided.
Okay. And then the next reference is to the Buffalo police report dated January 4th, 2020. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And the 7th reference is the highest guest report dated January 5th, 2020, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And then the final one is initial progressive guidance dated June 13th, 2018, correct?
Correct.
Now, in terms of items 5, 6, and 7, those were all obtained by January 5th, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Was there any new information supporting the termination of Mr. Coleman that was received after January 5th, 2020?
No. The only documentation when we spoke to him, he referenced that it was due to medical conditions, so we were waiting for medical documentation after the January 5th. So that's the
Okay.
additional information.
No, I understand, but in terms of information supporting the termination, you obtained nothing. JetBlue obtained nothing new after January 5th, 2020. Correct?
Correct.
Do you know, other than Mr. Coleman, do you know whether JetBlue has any other flight attendants who have type 2 diabetes?
No, personally, I'm not aware.
All right. Do you have any opinion as to whether a flight attendant with type 2 diabetes is still qualified to fly?
No, I do not have an opinion on that.
Okay. With respect to that item 6, the Buffalo police report dated January 4th, 2020, did you ever ask Mr. Coleman whether he disagreed with any aspects of the police report?
No,
I'm sorry, no?
no,
Okay. And with respect to item number 7, did you ever ask Mr. Coleman whether he disagreed with any of the aspects of or representations contained in the Hyatt guest incident report?
no.
Do you know, with respect to those 2 items, do you know whether anyone else at JetBlue ever asked Mr. Coleman whether he disagreed with any of the representations in the police report or the Hyatt guest incident report?
No, I'm not aware.
You led the investigation of this matter, correct?
Correct.
Did you review Mr. Coleman's personnel filed prior to recommending termination?
Personnel file in terms of,
Yeah, all the records that JetBlue maintained concerning his performance over the 9 years that he worked for the carrier.
yes.
You did review it?
Well, that's in the separation pack of the initial PG.
Mhm.
That's the initial progressive guidance. That's included. That was the only document that he had prior.
No, but weren't there a number of commendations from passengers in his file?
No, I did not review that.
Do you have knowledge of any other JetBlue employee who has been subject to criticism by hotel management representatives or employees concerning their behavior at a hotel?
Not that I'm aware of.
So how long have you been at JetBlue? How many years?
11 years.
And in all those 11 years, you've never received an account or heard of an incident in which a flight attendant allegedly engaged in misconduct at a hotel?
No, not that I'm aware of. Outside of the hotel, at work, yes, but not on the hotel.
What I'd like to do is take a 15-minute break. And Lily, is that okay that we can reconvene, say it at 3:45, 3:45?
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And thank you, Ms. Camacho, for your patience. So hopefully I'm near the end of this.
Okay.
This marks the end of immediate unit number 2. Going off record, time is 3:28 p.m.